All right, good morning, guys. October 15th, Rolland Market Mashup. Go to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe. We got the gang back together again. I was not here yesterday. I was getting blood work done for my physical. And sure enough, the market sold off, and that looks to continue today. Yesterday was definitely a nasty day. I think people are just starting to come to the realization that there's not a guaranteed stimulus, or it's just the market got overheated. I don't necessarily actually think it has anything to do with headlines. If you look at all the indicators that we talk about on this show, the market got stretched, and I think people were hoping you'd get a few more days of it, and I'm sure a lot of people were positioned incorrectly for this. I was a little bit too much on the bull side myself. We'll see what happens these next few days. But yeah, I mean, this morning, let's see, the S&P looks to be down 40 points, Dow down over 300, NASDAQ's the real leader of the losses, down almost 200 points. The initial jobless claim just came in, 898,000 versus 830,000. So I guess that's worse than expected. And, I don't think there's much of a shocker there. Things are nasty. We haven't had a vaccine. The coronavirus is spiking again all over the place. We keep hearing about it left and right, especially in Europe. Kind of reminds me of February, where the market was inching higher even though we were surrounded by bad news. And sure enough, you wake up, market starts to sell off. And yesterday, a lot of the banks had pretty impressive earnings, but they managed to all sell off. And this morning, I mean, let's dive right into it here. I got my watch list pulled up. First off, NEO obviously got that huge upgrade yesterday by JP Morgan, and they had a great day. They're at all-time highs. That looks to continue today. They're getting more upgrades now. They're the Chinese electric vehicle automaker, and the upgrade came from JP Morgan, and they basically said that they thought NEO was going to be the leader in the space in China. So that was big time. And then another big thing that happened was Fastly, which is one of these high-flying Robinhood tech stocks that our company pays to use. They are responsible for internet content and making sure the speed of the internet's up to speed. They came out yesterday right at the bell and basically withdrew guidance. And they said that they were not going to hit their numbers, and that they said that the statements that they made in the previous quarter were completely voided and people should not listen to that. And their biggest customer, TikTok, wasn't using them as much. And overall, the activity on Fastly was down. Fastly quickly sold off 30% in one wick, from 125 down to 90. And that continues to sell off this morning. Right now it's at 86.50. And yeah, the other thing, DraftKings yesterday, more executive inside selling. Not the first time that's happened, but anytime that's happened in the past, the stock's gotten completely destroyed. The one thing DraftKings is good at is they're good at forming partnerships and coming out with headlines, which they had another one this morning. So they're one stock that's up in addition to NEO. They got another upgrade, or not an upgrade, but they announced an agreement with Turner Sports. So that's moving that stock this morning. And yeah, there's a bunch of other stocks moving around, few upgrades, few downgrades. Netflix got an upgrade yesterday. They had a nice midday reversal just because the market sold off. And it looks like Netflix is actually increasing their pricing. It looks like they're possibly going to do that in Canada and then maybe the United States too, which I think is bullish for their stock.
And the job claim is worse than expected. That just came out.
Yeah, and now you got Secretary Steven Mnuchin on TV talking about the deal. And at this point, when they come on TV, let's be real, there's nothing they could say. There's either a deal or there's not. Right now, there's not. And that's just where we're at right now with the market. I think things can get nasty, or they can not. We're a headline away from really either direction. Dad, what are you looking at today?
I have my eyes on this SPI, which has been a headliner in the past. This is another one of these companies that is involved in the electric vehicle space, in that they started a subsidiary that said they're going to deal with one of the Chinese companies. No financials given, nothing. and the stock has doubled pre-market.
Yeah, it's up 94% right now. So what, are you looking to fade that? Could you even borrow shorts?
I haven't even looked to see if you could borrow shorts. You can't fade it till it makes a new. It seems like it's making new highs every 20 minutes, so it's not time to fade it. But obviously, the Robinhood crowd is all over it.
Yeah, 14 will be an interesting price to follow. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
No matter what's going on in the market, there seems to always be a handful of stocks that are having these kind of moves every single day. And it has nothing to do with fundamentals. It's pure trading and, people trying to get into a stock that is absolutely on fire for the moment. And there's one every day.
Yeah, and what I've learned is if you are going to play that strategy and you're going to try and catch a stock that's up 95%, the best way to do it is to wait for the breakouts. Because at the end of the day, this stock, when you look at it like you just said, it's basically doubled in a day, which means that it could easily reverse right back to where it doubled from in that day. And you don't want to buy this stock at 14 and all of a sudden, have it trade all the way down to 10 and you're at a $4 loss per share. I mean, that could be.
Yeah, and what you're saying is absolutely right. Like the first spike on this stock on the initial headline brought it to about $10.20. And then it spent, I don't know how many hours in the pre-market consolidating and then started heading back up towards that 1020 level. And when it broke through, it was a straight shot to almost 12. And then again, consolidation for a little while, broke through 12, and here it is at 14. So that's exactly right. You got to wait for the consolidation within the move and then play the breakouts. There's no other way to do this.
Yeah, you could almost sit back and watch the stock all day. And if it does happen to be as high flyer as it is right now, and it continues to be, watch it maybe dip back down to 13, maybe it even goes lower. But then maybe it charges back up to 14. And if it does, you can maybe pick up shares right on the breakthrough because you see pre-market, it got to 14, it got rejected hard. Now it's all the way back down to 1361. So if it goes back up to 14 and it breaks through, at that point, it rips through all the people who are stuck in the name, and then you could potentially catch it on a whole nother breakout from 14 up to 1450. I'm not saying that's going to happen today, but you're way better off sticking to that plan than trying to figure out some buy the dip mentality on a stock that's up 91% that, like I just said, could easily retrace this entire move right now. I haven't looked at what's actually causing it to move, but that's just a good way to play the breakout. That's what I did with GameStop last week when Mike brought it to my attention, is I just waited for it to make that new high push, and then boom, you have your shares ready to go. You get triggered in.
Right.
Out of it 20 seconds later for sometimes a really, really nice gain that could, make your entire week, really.
Right. And if you played the buy the dips on a stock like that, you're going to get crushed because these stocks are not the kind of companies or stocks that you want to buy a dip because they're not consolidating over time and they don't have any proven track record at these levels. So the only way to play it, as far as I'm concerned, is a breakout or shorting after a breakout, towards the consolidation.
Speaking of shorting, Roku got a downgrade this morning. And obviously, and this is the other thing, on a day like today, if you do think the market's going to sell off, what I am probably going to do if I think the market's going to sell off is wait for the market to kind of try and rally a little bit in that first 30 to 45 minutes of trading. Not saying it will, maybe it doesn't. But if it does, that's when you could maybe catch a couple shorts and then catch them on the way down. And obviously, anything could happen. All I know is Mnuchin's on TV right now. He's talking. The futures are not doing anything positive. But
I would be careful with shorting or doing anything right now. It's going to be a lot of turmoil up and down. And you can, find stocks you like and get, your average price down. If you already own it, you're down. Today could be a good opportunity. Ericsson Technologies, I know you guys know I brought them up a few months ago. I was in and out of that stock. I'll be buying them again today. They just won a deal with a Dutch telecom company, KPN, who removed China's Huawei from the consideration from the contract last year. We're starting to see the ripple effects of that with the whole China trade war and all of those things. Like we talked about a few months ago, Ericsson's a huge winner in that, regardless of the election results. That is a great hold. They've dipped a bit. Luckily, since I bought them, they've been down, and they're down pre-market today a decent amount. I'll be jumping on that ERIC. I think it's a great hold throughout the next few years. They're going to be a big winner with equipment and 5G.
Yeah. You did well on this stock the last time you brought them up. And if you look at the chart after they had that nice spike, and my stuff's frozen right now, but after they had the nice spike in July, it seems like it's just been consolidating all the way down to this 1050 mode. I like where your head's at here. I think that could be a good pickup. I do think that if the market is going to sell off, yesterday was nothing and right now is nothing. And it could, easily, let's just look at the levels for a second. A week ago, we were looking at the 3,300, 3,280, or at least it felt like a week ago. Could have been 2 weeks ago. So that stuff's all easily in play, even today, if you think about it. So like right now, the S&P is looking like it's at 30, or the futures 34, 38 right now. So, maybe 3,400 is where you could see it. I don't know if it's going to get to that today. All I'm getting at is, Dad, I think you said this at the beginning this morning, the market gave us a lot of gains in a really short amount of time over the last week. And it's now trying to decide if it wants to consolidate and go higher or give up all those gains and kind of have what would have been a false breakout that turns into a reversal and things get ugly for a bit, which is what a lot of people are saying would happen in October.
Yeah, there's no question. And, there is going to be a stimulus like we talked about down the road. And the idea that the jobless claims is worse today really brings it to the forefront that it's necessary now, not months down the road. And the market's, grappling with that now. So, when you look at these high flyers, it's hard to pick a spot to just buy, like Amazon. It had such a run up in the last few days. It's hard to say, all right, it's come off 150 points, time to jump in. The chart does not show you that. It could drop 300 points before you would start getting comfortable. And a lot of the charts look that way. Like I really like BABA because I think, Chinese stocks are going to do well with Biden compared to Trump. Yet if you look at the chart, it's kind of like Amazon. It's got much more room to the downside.
You also are just making an assumption that Trump's losing based on, I would wait until.
I think the market is also making that assumption.
I don't think so.
All the betting pools are saying that Biden's going to win.
Not what I'm seeing last night looking at the betting pools. I think these polls are actually very close. I've been doing a lot of research on this. It's going to create way more turmoil than we realize.
Well,
the markets are going to be surprised. I'm guaranteeing you.
Let me ask you, Dad, when you look at stocks like BABA or stocks like Amazon, and that they're now kind of going into at least short-term correction mode, I know yesterday or a couple days ago, you were talking about the moving average a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you start to develop levels? Like, do you start with the 5-day and then go to 20 and then 100? Talk about the levels.
Well, I think you got to look at first of all, when you're looking at a stock, when there's a correction mode in place, you want to look at the 1-year chart to see where you are. And, okay, if you're thinking about getting in Alibaba and you look at the 1-year chart, which I'm pulling up now.
And I have it for our viewers right here so you guys could see exactly what we're talking about right now.
This thing has been in a nice, like if you can imagine a imaginary line on the bottom of the higher lows going all the way up from March, and a trend line at the higher highs going all the way up. That line will take you to somewhere probably around 275 or 280 that this stock can get down to before.
Which is the 50-day moving average is exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, right? I didn't even put in my 50.
Yeah, no, and that's just for our viewers who, might be wondering, like, oh man, how is he coming up with these exact numbers? The beauty of it is chances are the platform you use will pull that line up for you if you want it. Go to studies, put in moving average, type in 50, and it'll literally map out the 50-day moving average. And then you could get the exact number. And not that it's always going to hit, but it clearly is a good point. Because like you just said, Dad, if you look at BABA, ever since you can make the argument May, anytime it dips, it goes down to the 50-day moving average. And that's where it gets its support. And then it bounces right off. And then there's another time where it looks like it's going to dip and it doesn't end up really dipping that much. But, the only time it came below that in recent, in the past year was in the whole February-March fiasco. And that was obviously
right.
A different story.
Absolutely. And a 50-day is a good one to use in a corrective mode of the market. If things get worse, then you got to look at the 100-day and the 200-day for further support. But to start, if you're starting a position, you wait till these stocks get down to the 50-day. And believe me, there's some stocks, if you look historically, that are so strong, they don't get down to the 50-day for a couple of years sometimes because they're just so phenomenal. But this one does, and that's what I would look for before getting in. And and it may not happen. It may just keep going up. But that's where a good entry point would be. And I would look at most of these high flyers with the same thinking.
And that's where, DraftKings is arguably at a pretty good level right now.
Yeah, but word just came out the Falcons just shut down their facilities. So I could see that having some issues today because there's been some talk about other teams doing the same thing now today.
Yeah, if you look at the long-term trend line on DraftKings, you can make a case for somewhere around $40 that this thing can get down to, 40 to 42.
Yeah, I was going to say 44. That's where I was kind of – but look, at the end of the day, the Michael Jordan news came out. It went to 43.50. This was probably a month ago, and it kind of consolidated, broke through, and just never looked back. So I guess you're right. It could easily touch those levels with zero hesitation. And I mean, I don't know if it has anything to do with that specifically or the market in general, but DraftKings has definitely come down quite a bit in the last few minutes. Since
that definitely has something to do with it.
Yeah, so it wouldn't shock me, actually, if this stock –
I mean, it's a headline stock, positive or negative.
Excuse me. And let's kind of go to the stocks that are really moving the markets today, even though it's basically pick your number here because it's anything. But Walgreens, they came out with their quarter today and reported adjusted quarterly profit of $1.02, which was 6 cents above estimates. So they were up this morning. I'm not sure where they're at now. Let's look at their chart real quick. Anyone know what their ticker is? This is
WAG.
With WBA is Walgreens.
Yeah. Yeah, WAPA.
Yeah, they're up a little pre-market. I'm sure they'd be up a lot more if we weren't in such a nasty sell-off.
I think CVS is a better bet right now.
You've talked about CVS before.
And then Morgan Stanley. I mean, Dad, what are your thoughts on some of these bank results? I know Goldman Sachs had a pretty good quarter yesterday, but they ended up going negative.
Yeah, all these stocks have the exact same earnings. Some are a little better than others. They're all better than expected for the most part. Revenue's better. Investment banking is where they've made a lot of money, and where their shortfall is, and what the market's most concerned with, are the, their basic yield curve revenues, and that's a big issue for the banks until the bond market is not under the control of the government. So I just get the feeling that with the Democrats possibly winning, the market's thinking ahead that what is going to come out to make these stocks look more attractive, and it's hard to get real excited by any of them. Now, a lot of these have stopped the buybacks, so that'll be one thing that'll help going forward. But Goldman was up 4 or 5 pre-opening yesterday. We said it's probably going lower, and it did, and it's lower today. I don't know where you buy these stocks, but you don't buy them up. You wait for dips, and then maybe you make it. You put in something. I'm long J.P. Morgan.
Or you just stay away from banks, have much better returns elsewhere.
You could do that, or just have smaller positions in them. It's kind of like the energy area. They're not attracting money.
Yeah, I'd rather I'm not in banks or energy, and I'm staying out of them. I'm staying with my own intuition on how I like the world. I don't like either of those sectors, and I'm going to stay away from them.
Yeah, you've been very vocal about that. And look, at the end of the day, those sectors have been complete duds. And if you've had your money elsewhere, it's done well. So let's get a quick check here on what the dollar is doing, because we haven't brought it up.
Strong today, which is part of the problem, because we've talked about that at length. So that's 0.4%. The dollar is up.
And Bitcoin's at over 11.3, almost 11.4. That's just steady.
Steady as a rock.
Yeah, Bitcoin's been hanging in there. No question about it.
So, Dad, when are you getting in on that one?
I'm not.
Wow.
No, I haven't changed my tune on Bitcoin. I still think it's something, if you want it in your portfolio, less than 1%, and then just don't even watch it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting to keep an eye on Zillow, because when we talk about moving averages, they've been kind of bouncing off the 5-day moving average. And I know there's a lot of people that are starting to look at that name, and I'm just wondering if it maybe is going to hold up. If it breaks, 100, I don't want to say all bets are off, but it has kind of held up. Like yesterday, it was holding up. It was actually up on the day when everything else was down. I know that's not the case right now. It doesn't really trade on much volume.
And their earnings are a couple weeks out, right?
Yeah, and that's, obviously you always risk a company coming out early like Fastly did yesterday and blindsiding everybody by saying that their earnings are not going to be at all what people expect. I
think Zillow is the opposite, if anything.
Yeah, no, I agree.
They seem to be setting up for a breakthrough. Like they're, I know they went up over 110. They're 10% off their highs. Maybe a bit more pullback will set up for a very nice earnings beat where you're going to see this thing climbing to like 120, 125.
I hope you're right. I've just been holding on to it. I'm kind of looking at them as a nice long-term position now. And Microsoft got another upgrade. They've gotten several upgrades now to 265. Netflix just turned green this morning. Netflix got an upgrade yesterday, and I already talked about this, but they just turned green this morning. One of the few stocks on my watch list that are green other than Bob's SPI, which looks like it would have been a good short at 14. But like I said, if it retests it, it'll probably be a good long. And then Neo, which is right around 27 right now. Everything else looks just deep in the red. You guys got any names you're looking at this morning that we haven't talked about?
I'm keeping my eye on Beyond. I got out of them a bit higher than where it's at now, over 190, like 196 last week. I'm definitely, I'm a huge bull on this stock, but I'd like to see it dip down to like 175.
Yeah, yesterday was kind of interesting because I follow Beyond Meat too, and that was another name that had a ton of strength yesterday. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people are hoping that they get that dip so they can buy, but to be honest,
might not come.
I don't know what was going on yesterday with Beyond Meat, but
And on that note, Dan, I'm going to be buying more today because I was thinking that yesterday. I was like waiting for more of a pullback with them, and it just wasn't happening. And even this morning, with where the market's down, it's down 2%. It's a very volatile stock. That just makes me like it even more at these levels. So I might dabble here.
I mean, today makes me think it, might have just gotten left out yesterday. I'm curious to see where it stands today, because if it ends up just selling off with everything else.
It hasn't proven to do that, though. If you've looked, it's done like the opposite. When the S&P shit the bed, it's been a nice, kind of like a Zillow situation.
I will say they shook off that downgrade to underweight really, really easily.
Yeah, I still don't understand what that was.
Yeah. And Bob, I mean, what are your thoughts on Apple? I know you're a big Apple guy, and it seems like people are kind of all over the place with their.
Yeah, I mean, every single time they come out with a phone, it sounds exactly the same to me, and it sells off, and then people start buying it, and they're always amazed at how good the numbers are. And I think this is going to be no different. You buy Apple on weakness, and Apple will do what the market does right now. But once I think once all of this about the phone stops being in the headlines, it'll be creeping higher again.
Yeah, well, Apple, it was interesting because late in the day yesterday, Apple, I was watching it, it turned green. And I was wondering if, that kind of caused the market to rally off of its lows a little bit. I don't know if that's really much to look at, but.
Yeah, and apparently one of the positives for this is Verizon and T-Mobile and AT&T, at some point, really getting aggressive, going for how great their 5G is. And they are going to probably offer some ridiculous deals as this gets going, just because they're trying to show that they have better coverage. And I think T-Mobile at this point is better for 5G, but I don't know a lot about it. But
I don't buy that. I don't think T-Mobile's better than for 5G. They're saying they are. Let's see it. I don't see how they beat Verizon at all with their cell tower situation.
All I know is 5G is getting a lot of hype.
But right now, it's very gimmicky. It's not. It's getting a lot of hype.
Now it's here. Now it's going to be here, and it's definitely
going to be here. But let's hold off before we're jumping into T-Mobile taking over Verizon with 5G. I think that's ridiculous.
Well, you got to watch the deals, because the better the deals, the more sales Apple will have. So that's what I'm thinking about, and that's good for Apple. Not necessarily good for Verizon or T-Mobile.
Let's just check on GameStop real quick here. $12, Mike.
Nice. I'll be adding more to that on any dip. So this stock's going to be doubling in the next few months.
I like the prediction there.
Boeing is getting closer to that 160 level, which I think is anything under 160. I think is easy for a trade.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that.
Peloton got another upgrade this morning for the same reason that they were getting upgrades when they were at $45 a share. They're now at 129, and you got to just ask yourself if this is just ridiculous at this point. I think I don't know. I've been pretty wrong about Peloton, even though I caught a great short, but that was a short-term trade. But long-term, the stock has done nothing but gone up, and it just seems like if the market's going to sell off a lot and tech's going to come down a lot, this stock could come down, easily $50, $60.
It could, but it's that stay-at-home mentality still. Back to that with all these shutdowns and, the virus uptick. So I don't know if a sell-off means Peloton's going to sell off hard.
Yeah, well, that kind of does it. Any last thoughts from either of you guys?
Yeah, to keep an eye on Plug. We talked about that before. It's finally starting to break down a little bit.
Time to jump on it?
No, not time to jump on it, but it's getting more interesting. It got in the 15.10 last night, pre-market.
Wow.
Before we even get off the show, I'll be honest, I'm looking for something to find to short right now. Not this second, but to get ready to short if it starts to rally at the open, because it seems like the market's made up its mind that it wants to sell off. And
I just would be careful. I think we're a couple weeks from the election. The market's not going to be making up its mind about anything with a memory for the next couple of weeks.
I still think Zoom on any strength is the best thing that I see out there, but the virus getting worse is not helping that short.
Yeah, I would be careful with that. The timing on that is tough.
Well, they've been getting more upgrades too. They got another upgrade this morning actually with the price raised to
it's hard to
55.
be shorting Zoom going into cold weather months with the virus.
Well, that's the only problem, but I will say that soon there'll be no one left to upgrade Zoom, and that's when you really...
I hate Zoom. I still don't like that. Every time I'm on there, there's a glitch. I like Google Hangouts. Like, I still don't get how Zoom is taking off like this.
Well, yeah, I think that's why Dad's thesis on them being a great short, when you look at the competition they have and the fact that any stumble in earnings or any stumble in guidance,
security, something will happen with them.
Yeah,
Trastly is a great way to see what can happen to these stocks with any glitch. I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.